How can you personalize your messaging to physicians for greater prescription intent? What are people saying about your brand? How can you make your marketing efforts more precise and effective? These and many more questions are answered on this podcast, which is here to serve as a playbook for all your pharma marketing needs. As your host, Soumya Prakash, co-founder of Multiplier AI Solutions, sits across pharma industry's top experts. This is your place to get all the insights about Gen AI, data, and beyond.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Pharma Marketing Playbook, Data, Gen AI, and Beyond, your go to podcast for mastering pharmaceutical marketing, analytics, and AI trends. Join industry leaders as we explore cutting edge trends, strategies, and the impact of AI. Tune in for more actionable insights and stay ahead in the dynamic world of pharma marketing. I'm Soumya Prakash, co founder at Multiplier AI, and today we have a very special guest joining us, Mr. Prashant Menon. Mr. Prashant Menon is a distinguished leader in the pharmaceutical industry. He completed his bachelor's in microbiology at Women's College and his MBA in marketing at MIT League of College. He began his career at Cipla and soon advanced to become a group product manager at Sun Pharma. He has undertaken senior roles at Ranbaxy, Alchem Labs, and Glenmark before becoming vice president at Alembic. Later in his career, he has worked as director at Vanbury Limited and managing director at Exceltis India. He is also a visiting professor at Narsi Monji Institute of Management Studies. Currently, he is the founder and director of Workplace Dynamics. Prashant also is a certified coach from Marshall Goldsmith and the Bento Coach Academy, and he now serves as a certified coach in the International Coaching Federation. So, welcome, Prashant. We are very honored to have you today with us, and what a remarkable career you have had all your life.
Thank you, Somya, for the kind introduction, and it's a pleasure to share some time here and share some insights with the people who would be tuning in.
Sure. I think we are all very excited to know your insights and learn from your exemplary journey. Uh, could you start by sharing, your journey in the pharma world? How have your experiences, right from frontline sales, marketing, general management, shaped your perspective in pharma marketing?
Okay. So, one is always wiser towards the end of, towards the mid or the end of one's career. As I got into pharmaceuticals, not by design, but by default, I, of course, joined Cipla in the field sales and then spent in some time in field sales and moved up the ranks in Cipla and then headed on to join the marketing team at Cipla, what they call the product management team. And post that, I had a long run in the product management with Cipla, Sun Pharma, and Ranbaxy, where I was also the marketing head for two business units with a task force head as well as in Ranbaxy. So there was a lot of work with the sales and marketing teams that went on the initial, 16 years of my career. The latter part of around 11, 12 years in the career was spent in more of general management roles, where I started working and managing a P&L for the first time in companies like Alchem, then went on to be a cluster head in companies like Glenmark, and then also a senior, cluster head at Alembic. Each of these journeys in all these companies were a lot to do with the sales and marketing function. That is the business function that we normally speak. And the progress has been very, very, very seamless and very sequential. Each of the roles that I played in different companies, I think, helped me to become better at what I do, what I understand, helped me face a lot of challenges because every company has its own piece of strength and weaknesses in a particular industry when you operate. And for the pharma, by now you're also aware, is a very tightly held space, highly fragmented, extremely competitive. And most of the companies that I belong to were Indian MNCs. So typically we handled the formulation business or the branded generic business, as we call it. Very, very interesting. And the last part of my career, where I spent in the corporate for the last 4 years, I have been at director level roles, handling the entire organization, all the functions reporting into me. And they were more transformative in nature, typically from the kind of businesses that I, took charge of. There were some interesting assignments that made me a better professional at what I believe and do. So the journey has been fascinating because pharmaceuticals is a very operationally driven industry. The more and more you spend time trying to work on the small nitty gritties in business, is something that one needs to always keep in mind. And that's something that I learned right from the early stages at Cipla, where we were working on certain brands and therapies to strengthen in particular, like in particularly respiratory. I continued to understand a lot more of systems and processes when I moved into Sun. And my stint with Ranbaxy gave me the kind of aggression and the kind of financial understanding of brands and marketing, which I think helped me overall as a professional to be a lot more equipped to handle the general management roles. So, what I would look back is for all people who are starting careers now or are already into the first 5 to 10 years of careers, I would recommend that people start looking at their careers in blocks of 3 to 5 years, where the first 3 to 5 years or the first two blocks of around almost 8 to 10 years are typically your foundational years. And for me, it it believed in the system of being good at what you do, being a specialist in the field of marketing. And once you're a specialist in the field of marketing, you start to learn and contribute a lot more. The second half or the second decade of your career very typically starts moving from being a specialist to a generalist. And that's where you start handling general management roles. Somewhere after year 15 and year 20 is an ideal time that people can migrate into being a general management, get into the P&L management, because that's what gives you the sense of achievement and accomplishment in terms of running business units. And the third decade of your career very typically leads you to apex positions where you are looking at it from a bird's eye view. You have multiple therapies that you operate in, different teams of different skill sets. So you not only learn marketing as you grow, you start learning sales, you start learning people, you start learning soft skills. And these are things that after 10 years of your career, the soft skills starts playing a much major role. So while you keep strengthening your functional and technical knowledge, I think it's your soft skill that starts building up from the second decade of your career. So for me, it was very, very similar. I mean, I started with something in marketing, moved on to sales, and then sales and marketing. And there began the entire nuances of stakeholder management, both internal and external. And each of them, kept me in good stead when I ran businesses for different organizations over my entire corporate tenure. So it's been fascinating. It's been very enriching as an individual. And when you see a lot of colleagues of yours who have gone places along with you, you feel very accomplished and very, very humble to be in a space that has been very, very privileged.
I think what a remarkable journey, and thanks for sharing, the journey and its various phases. Lots to learn, I think for all the audience, the way Prashant has categorized the initial phase of solidifying, learning and becoming a master at your skill, and then branching into management, and then from there building on to becoming much more accountable and responsible in management positions. So he has done it all, and there's lots to learn. So you have had a remarkable career leading top Indian MNCs. Could you discuss some of the strategic alignments and leadership initiatives you have implemented that made a significant impact on these organizations?
Sure. In fact, being a part of many large organizations, you have an opportunity to experience a multitude of challenges, a lot of issues that really crop up. And, you're quite fortunate because these things are present. And one thing that I've always found helpful as a concept is, different organizations have different requirements. And as a leader, it is important for you to really know and absorb what is the organizational culture before making the relevant impact or the contributions that is necessary. And that's what I actually did and worked on quite a bit. Two examples that I can cite to you in terms of at two different levels that I worked on. One was as a marketing head when I was in one of my organizations towards the end of my marketing head role. We had a very interesting challenge in terms of we had a relative decent presence in a specialty or in the therapy area, and we wanted to be a lot more stronger in that. And let me say this was a dermatology basket. What we realized is that the business till date was a lot of transitional and transactional to a great extent, and we needed to bring more quality into the entire relationship that would help sustenance in the long run. And what did we do? The first thing that we did was we tried to beef up the customer list, because that's something that is the fulcrum of any business. if your doctor list is not appropriate to the growth that you want to achieve, you will never be able to grow the kind of leaps and bounds that you have in your vision statements. So the first thing that we did was trying to clean up and strengthen the kind of dermatologists that we were covering as an overall portfolio. The second that we did was we tried to realign what would be our major brands that would drive that growth in the dermatologist segment. So that was the second part, where we identified two key arrowhead brands that had a very designated presence in that specialty and in the indication that we promoted. That was the second part that we really got into. And the third part that we did was a lot of the interactions that we had with the doctors. We brought about a lot of science-based activities. Now, when we looked at science-based activities, we tried to step up the quality of science-based activities in that organization, so that come the next 2 to 3 years, our agenda was to increase the market shares from these specialists for our brands in a very designed manner. And in the first 18 months, we spent time getting the list corrected, getting the brands aligned with the kind of resourcing that it needed to reach out to the in-clinic of the doctors. The second 18 months that we really focused on a 3-year agenda, the second 18 months that we worked on was very precisely have a series of interventions or engagement programs with these set of doctors, where we ultimately landed up after 3 years getting the two brands. One brand was the number one prescribed in its category. The second brand was in the top three in the category. So as an organization at that specialist, from being the sixth or the seventh at that point of time, if I may recall, we landed up to be the third for a consistent time after that also. Now, that's an example where rather than making broad changes across or sweeping changes across, it was important to recognize and respect the current ethos of an organization or the culture of an organization, and then bring about changes as to what an organization might require. A similar model I followed in a much larger role that I was handling as a cluster head. We wanted to be very strong in the acute business. And in the acute business, we had 3 different business units that were a part of the driver. We had chosen 2 specialists that were going to be some of the key builders for the organization at large. And there were 3 business units where close to around 1100, 1200 field force that was operating in this market. Now, with around 1250 odd field force operating in this market, the whole idea was to synergize the activities of all the 3, get it aligned to these 2 common specialists, namely the ENTs and the pediatricians. We actually rallied around a lot of in-clinic and doctor engagement programs here. What called here was, I had in force a very mature team, a team that was highly experienced. They had a great success rate in the past. It was important to recognize that and give them very clear directions on what is our objectives and how do we have common monitoring tools along the way to really achieve leadership status in that specialty. Now, that happens through managing a lot of leaders in the organization and bringing them into the forefront when they want to look at this change in mindset. So both the examples that I give you, one was of dermatology and the second one was of an acute market. A lot of leadership comes into the front, right from understanding the current strength of the team, looking at what need gaps are there that you need to really train and iterate. In some cases, I could do it directly. In some cases, I had the team from the L&D and the HR that supported me in this transition. And you must learn to recognize that you may not have the answer to everything. You need to recognize that you may not be able to do everything. And that's where seeking out help, looking at expertise that come into a special field, are the ones that help you to really change that kind of leadership domain that you want to create in an organization. So these were 2 examples that I can really cite to allude to what your question was all about.
That's wonderful. And since you had such an extensive career in marketing and sales, would you like to particularly point out what are the common challenges that pharma companies face when it comes to marketing?
Okay. Well, I think this has been a challenge for quite some time, and it's only got more acute at the moment. It's very hard pressing for us to do the right change. I think we have constantly 2 big customers where we need to start profiling better. The first is the customers in the market, which is the HCPs, the healthcare practitioners. There is a great desire, need to really profile or know your customer in totality today. In the last decade, the customer's profile of managing patients and managing their own careers have changed dramatically. And a lot of the pharma marketing, even today, is not up to date with the changing customer needs. And that customer profile is something that we need to start looking at it on a quarterly basis. We today don't even look at it on an annualized basis. Very few companies do it, very few business teams do it. But if you look at the industry at large, if there is one big problem that I would say marketers need to crack the code along with their business heads, that one code is to understand my customer better. So any tool, any work that goes behind identifying the needs of my doctor, his self needs, and the needs of his patient management models will be something that will be a bullseye for marketers. That's point number one. The second point that we have is an internal stakeholder, the teams that promote the products to doctors. There is a lot that goes in trying to equip them to handle the changing requirements in the market. Many of us are still comfortable with yesteryear strategies. We are comfortable with tactics that were good 10 years back, 15 years back. We are still milking the cow there. We are not going to get too much of results. Because your customer external is changing so rapidly, the internal customer needs to step up. And here, marketing and sales leaders will do a great justice in trying to have a much better understanding of how the external customer has changed and how should I change my internal customers towards the direction in meeting both the ends. Otherwise, we will have a disconnect and somebody else will start coming in, a little more wiser member will start coming in and start grabbing your market share. And you will be left wondering, I think I'm doing all the right things, and why am I still not gaining market share? Probably this is where you missed the bus by not profiling your external customer very well and accordingly not equipping your internal customer to handle that change up to date.
I think very rightly put, and a lot of emphasis also is on people and teams, which you have pointed out that the caliber of the teams, their experience, their expertise into gaining market share, competitive understanding. All this goes a long way in kind of making sure that these
Yes.
strategies actually bear fruit. I would request you to share if any examples where your approach led to a transformative outcome, and also in this AI era, where we are talking of how AI will kind of replace mundane, repetitive tasks of people. How do you see that change coming in the next generation?
See, we work with a lot of young generation marketeers in the current role that I play at Workplace Dynamics. We have been working with a lot of senior, mid management, and young team members across various organizations. I mean, I work with the number one company. I work with the smallest organization as well. So size and scale is not our concern. What is our concern is how do we impact our clients and our partners with whom we work. We work a lot on building capabilities and improving clarity of context because today everything is very contextual. If you can seize the moment, you will then be ready to get the rewards out of it. Now, how do you seize a moment? How do you have the contextual clarity is by staying in touch with what is happening around you. So what I see in a lot of young generation marketers and say marketers who spent around 10 years in the industry, the ability to improve their relative currentness or the relative recency is not as desired as it should be. And when you don't have this, you will lose out the opportunities that the digital technology is going. We all say that data is a new oil. That's a very common lingo that's been spoken around. But I will not be surprised to probably add in or put my neck out and say that technology can be the next biggest, let's say, oil here, because everything that you work around, technology is bound to touch you. Technology is bound to touch you, and AI comes in there. Where is AI today helping in most, let's say, pharmaceutical organizations? Let's be very focused on the branded generics that dominates the Indian industry. AI today in healthcare is getting better at diagnosis. It is helping doctors diagnose things better. It is helping patients manage their ailments better through a lot of wearable technologies that are there. Doctors get real-time updates on how my patient is doing. It is helping in a lot of clinical trials to get digitized. And when clinical trials are getting digitized, the new drug discovery becomes a lot more faster as compared to the older times when it was longer. COVID was a great example. We saw vaccines come out in the market in 1 to 2 years, which generally is anywhere between a 10 to 20 year horizon. But when you see new drugs getting discovered and developed and commercialized in less than 10 years, it only tells you that technology has aided something a lot more faster than it would be. I'm sure the next 10 years will see changes a lot faster than we saw in the last 20 years. Right? AI will play a role there. Marketers will need to start looking at where can AI play a part in my journey. Can AI play a part in increasing diagnosis? Can AI play a part in helping patient management systems get a lot more accurate and a lot more effective? Can AI help me in profiling my patients and my doctors better? Because if these three windows are tapped on a regular basis, I think the young generation marketers will be aligned with the technological changes, and come the next 5 years, we will see them moving along with the change that AI is trying to bring about.
I think that brings me exactly to the next question. I know you have spoken so much about pharma and teams and marketing, but how do you see the integration of data science and AI transforming management of patients? Do you see that there has to be an impact there as well?
Yes, there are a few companies who've already taken the lead. If you look at some of the large top 20 companies, I see them doing some interesting work around AI. They are using a lot of superior diagnostics to help doctors detect things better. They are investing in a lot of digital support programs for patients. Now, this is where pharma companies are already beginning to take the lead. We are slow as an industry, we are very slow in these changeovers. But I think a few big companies, once they put their resources ahead and they start streaming in, we will see this adoption a little faster. Also, we must keep lookout for companies that are specialized companies and small sized or mid sized. They are a lot more quicker than the large organizations. For example, if there's a company that is only focused on one single therapy area and it's led by some new gen leaders, they are ready to adopt digital movements or technologies a lot faster than the bigger companies, where probably the hierarchical system makes it much slower to get things happening. So while the large companies have the deep pockets to push things harder, we should not keep the small organizations. There are many small organizations that I work with who've already started investing in technology driven tools. Now, these technology driven tools are starting with in field management. It is also beginning to start tapping into certain doctor profiling details. And this is where I would say that going forward, technology will certainly be a very major strategic enabler for organizations that want to stay ahead of the curve in pharmaceuticals as well.
I think, while you have such an extraordinary career with various roles, what advice would you like to give the new entrants, specifically in the marketing side, that they should use data and AI, and how could they create relevant and impactful campaigns? Any tips?
Yeah. No, I'm a great advocate or a proponent of piloting things. Yeah.
So, you have also been a visiting faculty at Narsimondji Institute and have various coaching credentials to your credit. How have these roles influenced your approach to leadership and team organization behaviors in the corporate world?
I think that's an interesting question, and something that comes to me right away in the mind is the challenge on how do you manage multi-generational workforces. If you look at today's organizational setup, you've got many people who are in their 20s to up to 30 years. They make up a small size of your workforce. You've got quite a few chunk in the 30 to 50-year-old gap, so they have some kind of an experience under their belt and they keep gaining strength. And you have the senior management who are typically 50 years and above. Now, where I see a very interesting, intriguing factor is that how successful is a leader in bringing out the best in each of these three different generations? Because each of these three generations are very clear in what they do and what they want because of certain exposures and certain experiences. The ones who are under 30 have got certain exposures. The ones who are between 30 and 50 have got an increasing experience that makes them strongly believe in something or not believe in something. And the ones who are at 50 plus have actually reached that position because of doing something consistently well. And it's working for them. Now, the ones who are in the 50 plus, and that's where top management and leadership needs to keep in mind, is how effectively do you engage these multi-generational field, forces. Are you getting the best out of your young people, giving them a space, giving them an ambience to explore and express themselves? If you can do that, you really take away the best out of these very young workforces. The ones who are 30 to 50, it is on how you start leveraging their productivity better, how you can train them more effectively. And when you train them more effectively, it actually puts you in a space of strength, because many of these go into the senior management cadre after a decade or after 5 years. And that's where their first-hand experience of handling multi-generational workforces comes into hand. So what we're looking at is a greater effectivity, we are looking at greater engagement, and thereby a resulting greater productivity. So all these three buckets of people can lead to a greater engagement and a greater productivity in the organizations. And that's where a lot of my coaching journeys and credentials have actually helped me to probably understand this very rightly, and also to give people the right kind of direction and the right kind of an exploratory space so that they can discover the goodness within them. So it's interesting. I guess both my coaching and my professor journeys have enabled me to look at both these different spectrums and bring the best out from me as well as from the target audiences that I generally interact with.
Thanks so much, Prashant, for sharing your wonderful insights. As we close this podcast, would you like to share any of the tips for our audience, specifically the brand managers, the upcoming new students who are hearing us?
A few things that I would suggest would really help them is one, stay very updated on what is happening today. When I say stay updated, there are three fronts that I would really like them to be updated on. One is, what's changing around the customers that they are managing. Purely profiling customers and its relevance and the validity of their profiling is very, very critical. So that's of a very urgent importance that they need to work on. The second is on their product and their therapy management. Stay updated on what exactly is the change that's happening in the brands that they manage, in the therapies that they manage, how the disease is progressing, what are the various options that doctors have. And the last is, how can they look and fall back on technology as a great enabler in their strategy? Because today, as they become a little more senior in the next few years, technology will be a very important byproduct of everything they do. The more they are up to date on which kind of technology works for what kind of marketing campaigns, they will be able to reach the larger audiences a lot more quicker than today's physical reach that we do. So the advantage of digital and technology is the scale at which it can operate and proliferate is a lot more quicker and more impactful as compared to a physical journey that we play today. So today's pharma is very typically physical led, but tomorrow's pharma is going to be probably more digital led. And if it is going to be more digital led, are you keeping yourself up to date on those changing requirements? So knowing the customer better, knowing your brand and disease and therapy better, and third, knowing how technology can be better used in this entire journey to reach out to a larger audience much more quicker, much more effective, and much more cost effective.
What a wonderful message to leave us with, from phygital, or rather physical to phygital to now digital. I think we all need to move towards that journey. Thank you, Mr. Prashant Menon, for sharing your invaluable insights and experience with us today. Your expertise in pharma marketing and your impressive journey has definitely provided us with such a deeper understanding of how AI and pharma marketing can drive significant business growth and innovation in marketing. To our listeners, we hope you found this episode of Pharma Marketing Playbook as enlightening as we did. AI and pharma marketing from experts like Prashant can help us in navigating this complex landscape. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network. Until next time, this is Soumya signing off. Stay innovative, stay informed, and definitely keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible in pharma marketing. Thank you once again, Mr. Prashant, for joining us, and we had a great session connecting with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us in this episode. We hope that the deep insights and knowledge shared today will help your business and brand grow by leaps and bounds. Remember to follow the podcast, and if you wish to know more about Multiplier AI solutions, please visit the links given in show notes.